Can you believe it? Toan and Diem's most important life moment didn't arrive with fireworks, a stunning wedding dress, or romantic vows, but with just a signature, a Sidewalk coffee, and a tear that fell onto the commitment paper. Will they truly be happy, or was this a sudden, high-risk decision? The night before their fateful day, no one could have guessed that the simple white shirt and the pale pastel dress would be their wedding attire the next morning. No guests, no grand venue, not even wedding rings exchanged. Insert scene of Diem staring intently at the paper, her hand trembling. What made them bypass all traditions, stepping into a modest registry office as casually as if they were running an errand? That morning, amidst the roaring traffic and the familiar scent of roasted coffee, Toan held Diem's hand so tightly that she had to playfully tease him. She was smiling, but his heart was racing. What did he say to her that changed everything? And why, right after signing the papers, did they burst out laughing, a stunned, incredulous laughter, as if they had just survived an impossible challenge? Prepare yourself to witness this. Real marriage isn't a glamorous event, but a quiet promise. This is a true love story, where the ordinary becomes the everlasting. Click subscribe and like this video to support simple, genuine love and the bell icon so you don't miss any of the authentic, heart-touching love stories we'll bring to you. What will the most important moment of your life look like? Will it sparkle like 1,000 diamonds, explode like a dazzling firework display across the night sky? Or be narrated by violins and flowery vows under candlelight? In today's real-life love story, there is none of that. Toan and Diem's eternal promise didn't come from an extravagant ceremony, but simply from a warm, humble cup of Sidewalk coffee and a silent signature at a modest registry office. This is the story of love maturing into marriage in the most honest way possible. No glamour, no drama, yet profoundly more moving than any fairy tale wedding. Take our hand and join us as we follow Toan and Diem through an ordinary morning, the morning that changed everything forever. From the familiar taste of coffee to the wooden door of the registrar's office, and finally their return to a small sunlit kitchen filled with laughter where they officially became a family. That morning on Imagine a Beautiful Day of Imagine a Memorable Month started just like any other day in their 7 years together. The familiar alarm clock went off, the faint smell of toast drifted from the kitchen, and the sunlight streamed through the curtain. Yet there was a difference, a gentle anticipation. Almost a whisper was lurking in the air, wrapping itself around their every gesture. Diem was choosing her dress. Not a white silk wedding gown, but the light pastel blue cotton dress she usually wore on relaxed weekends, the one Toan liked best because it highlighted her radiant smile. She turned to Toan, who was meticulously ironing his shirt. Toan, she called, her voice carrying a lovely tremor. Why are you ironing your shirt so perfectly? It's as if we're about to meet the Prime Minister. Toan chuckled. He stepped back, looking at her with affection. The simple white shirt, paired with plain dark jeans, was the style he always favored, authentic and steadfast. I'm meeting the queen of my life, Diem, he replied, his voice deep and warm. And I want this white shirt to be decent enough to bear witness to an eternal promise. You know, no silk dress, so at least a perfectly ironed shirt. No luxury car was waiting outside, no camera flashes. Just the old motorbike that had carried them through thousands of roads and countless everyday moments. The absence of those luxuries didn't make the moment any less sacred. On the contrary, it reinforced the meaning they were getting married for the substance of their love, not for the ritual. Before heading to the registry office, they went to a spot integral to their love story. Their familiar Sidewalk coffee shop, where they had visited countless times throughout their years together. It was a small street corner where the beeping of motorbikes, the calls of the sticky rice vendor, and the lively chatter of morning laborers blended into a vibrant symphony of the city. They sat facing each other on two small plastic chairs, the worn stainless steel table that had witnessed their clumsy first date, their silly arguments, and their whispered future plans. Toan ordered an iced black coffee. Diem chose a warm back shoe white coffee with condensed milk. Toan lightly stirred his coffee, the sound of metal against the glass clearly audible to him. He looked up, gazing deeply into Diem's eyes. "Doesn't it feel a little strange, Diem?" whispered, flashing a smile that was both shy and deeply happy. "Everyone around us is rushing to work, and here we are sitting, drinking coffee before we go. Sign our lives away." Toan took her hand on the table. His hand was slightly cool but steady. "That's the beauty of it, Diem. No pressure, no extravagance. Our love was built on these very coffees, these ordinary mornings. The signing is just the official acknowledgement of what we've been doing every day, choosing each other." They giggled about the small things, how nervous they both felt, how Toan had forgotten to bring his commemorative fountain pen, and how surreal it was that they would officially become husband and wife today. Each warm, familiar sip of coffee acted like a gentle sedative, calming their anticipation and reinforcing a sense of peace. In that moment, amidst the city's noise, they exchanged a silent vow. The bitter and sweet taste of the coffee was exactly the flavor of the life they were about to step into. Finishing their coffee, Toan quietly paid the bill and gripped Diem's hand tightly. Together, they crossed the busy street, walking slowly down the familiar sidewalk they had traversed countless times. Diem teased him about holding her hand too tightly. "You're hurting me, Toan. What if you squeeze too hard now, and I can't sign the paper later?" He laughed out loud, his laughter echoing against the car horns. "I'm sorry. My heart is beating faster than I expected. It's racing against time to reach the finish line. Do you know, after 7 years, it still feels like the very first time we held hands. There was something incredibly beautiful about this feeling of everything being normal." Along the way, they passed Box Tom, the flower vendor, who always greeted them with a morning smile, the small convenience store, where they often bought ice cream after their evening dates, a group of children playing jump rope without a care, their innocent laughter serving as a backdrop tune. All these everyday details made the moment feel more real, more precious. They weren't running away from life. They were bringing their love right into the middle of its ordinary flow. As they walked past a construction site, an image flashed in Diem's mind. The early days when Toan was struggling to launch his startup. The evenings she brought him dinner, sitting on a pile of rubble under the dim street lights to eat with him and share his worries about the future. They had nothing but trust and love. Diem squeezed Toan's hand back. "Remember, when we were dating, you promised to buy me a house with a sun-drenched balcony." Toan smiled, his eyes distant. "I still remember, but I've realized the house isn't as important as having you by my side. You've already turned our tiny rented room into a sun-drenched balcony every single day." As they approached the civil registry office, Diem's steps slowed down slightly. Not out of hesitation, but because of the solemnity of the moment. Toan noticed immediately. He stopped, turned to face her, his eyes filled with confidence and quiet happiness. "We are actually doing this," she whispered. Again, her shy smile, now an expression of determination. Toan nodded. In his chest was a mixture of excitement, gratitude, and a profound sense of peace. This wasn't a fairy tale scene, not a romantic novel. This was real life built on shared meals, challenges overcome together, and countless ordinary days spent side by side. Standing before the office door, they exchanged a brief look. It was a look that contained 7 years, including tears, hurried kisses, and all the unfinished plans. Everything felt worth it. They stepped inside together. Inside the office was surprisingly quiet. The atmosphere was simple, yet deeply meaningful, as if time had slowed down to honor their moment. The room was humble. Pale cream walls, an old wooden desk, and a few plastic chairs neatly arranged. A ceiling fan rotated slowly overhead, stirring the warm air like a peaceful rhythm for their beginning. The registrar smiled a genuine smile, as if she had witnessed thousands of love stories just like theirs. Diem and Toan sat down. They listened to the official read the dry procedures, but every word resonated like a sacred prayer. Then came the moment. "Please sign here." Toan signed first. He held the pen, his hand slightly trembling, but his handwriting was neat and clear. He signed not just with ink, but with all the years he had waited to officially call her his wife. It was Diem's turn. She took a deep breath, looking up at Toan. He was watching her, his gaze all the encouragement she needed. She placed the pen down, and then with a single signature, Diem officially became Toan's life partner. Scratch. 2 signatures, 1 lifetime. The registrar smiled, handing them the marriage registration certificate. "Congratulations on your happiness. From now on, you are officially husband and wife." They held the fragile piece of paper, but its weight was immense. They exchanged a tight hug, not the sudden embrace of triumph, but the deep hug of reassurance and belonging. They left the registry office under the golden sunshine. There were no trumpets or roses, only the calls of street vendors, but to them it was the sweetest sound in the world. They didn't go out for a celebration meal. They didn't call anyone immediately. Toan and Diem decided to do what they loved most, go home and cook a good meal together. In their small kitchen, bathed in the late morning sun, Diem stood by the stove, meticulously washing vegetables. Toan stood behind her, his arms wrapped around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Is that it, husband?" Diem teased. "No other ritual?" Toan gently kissed her hair. The familiar smell of her shampoo made him feel so peaceful. "Of course, they're his wife." The ritual begins right now. He turned her around, held her shoulders, and looked deep into her eyes. One last time, his gaze filled with the warmth of a committed man. Our ritual is this overcoming every tomorrow, together cooking together, laughing together, growing old together, and drinking sidewalk coffee together until the end of our lives. In that small kitchen filled with sunlight and laughter, love became marriage in the most authentic way. It wasn't a ceremony. It was a daily commitment sealed with the taste of coffee and a signature on paper. Toan's old motorbike glided along the familiar road. This was the route they had taken thousands of times from home to work, from home to their favorite sidewalk cafe, from home to the cinema. But today, everything was different. Diem leaned her head on Toan's shoulder, feeling the warmth of his back, listening to the familiar sound of the motorbike engine, a sound that had accompanied so many chapters of their love. The wind played with her hair as she smiled to herself. She realized that from this ordinary trip onwards, every journey would be a shared one. Diem gently slipped her free hand into Toan's jacket pocket, touching the thin marriage certificate card. It was still warm from his hand and the earlier tight grip. The truth lay there not in a glossy parchment, but in the strangely profound sense of peace she felt behind him amidst the busy flow of life. Toan deliberately drove slower, not because he was afraid of traffic, but because he wanted to prolong this feeling, the feeling of a man who had fulfilled a sacred promise. He listened to Diem's steady breathing behind him, and occasionally he felt her smile through his shirt. Stopping at a red light, Toan turned his head, his eyes seeking hers. No words were needed. He simply wanted her to know how he was feeling. Diem placed a quick kiss on his shoulder, an intimate, familiar gesture, yet one that held a new significance today. He had once dreamed of a grand day where he could stand before everyone and loudly proclaim her name. But the quiet moment of signing just now brought a far deeper satisfaction. It was theirs alone. Their love didn't need an audience. This marriage wasn't for show. It was for commitment. Her Toan, this man, always chose the most authentic way to love her. He hadn't promised a castle. He promised a home. He didn't promise a luxurious honeymoon. He promised their first cozy meal under the name husband and wife. That was what she cherished. They rode past the bridge that used to be their nightly dating spot, just to watch the city lights turn on. The shady trees where they used to hide from the sun during summer afternoons. Every familiar sight became a page in their memory album. And today, they had just put a permanent stamp on the final page of their dating book. Finally, they arrived home. Their living space was a small apartment on the second floor of an old collective building, which they had lovingly turned into a home. Toan unlocked the door, and today, the click sound of the lock sounded very different. Diem stepped inside first. The late morning's golden sunlight flooded the small kitchen, illuminating the little potted plants on the windowsill. Diem turned around to find Toan still standing at the door, his eyes sweeping across the room, the old sofa, the bookshelf filled with books and souvenirs, the doormat they bought last week. He looked at everything with a completely new expression. "Why are you standing there?" Diem asked, smiling. Toan walked over. He didn't say anything, just hugged her tightly. This wasn't a hurried embrace. This was the first hug of a husband to his wife in their own home. An Toan, Diem whispered, feeling her heart melt. "I'm just taking it all in." "Diem," he murmured into her hair. "Now everything here has a new meaning. This isn't just a house. It's the shared home of a husband and wife." He released her, but held her hand tightly. "What shall we do, first wife?" he asked, using the new term with an adorable touch of awkwardness. Diem smiled brightly, pointing to the apron hanging behind the door. "We'll do what we do best. Create warmth together from the simplest things." There was no grand party. Their celebration meal was a home-cooked lunch, simple but full of love. Diem began washing the vegetables, her hair neatly pinned up. Toan rolled up the sleeves of his white shirt, put on the old apron, and started prepping the meat. The small kitchen was instantly filled with the aroma of caramelized onions and the gentle running of water. They made fish simmered in tomato sauce and sour soup. Familiar, easy-to-make dishes that always brought comfort. While slicing tomatoes, Diem turned to Toan. "Don't you see? Everything is exactly the same as yesterday morning the day before." Toan smiled his eyes, lingering on the simple silver wedding ring on her finger, which he had put on as soon as they left the registry office. "No, my love. Look at your hand again. It has an extra ring. And more importantly, look at me." He paused, setting the knife down. "I feel more responsible, but it's not a burden. It's a sweet responsibility. From now on, every decision I make has to include you. Marriage isn't a destination. It's a key to open the door to eternal companionship." Diem walked closer, taking his hand, her palm still slightly damp from rinsing vegetables. "Then, husband, my commitment is this. I will always keep our kitchen warm, and there will always be Sidewalk coffee for you every Sunday morning." They shared a gentle kiss, a kiss more fervent than any grand vow. The dishes were served. Their first lunchtime meal as husband and wife. They sat facing each other, without phones, without music. There was only the sound of chopsticks tapping against the bowls and the whisper of the wind outside. Toan served Diem the biggest piece of fish. "You are my first and only wife." Diem replied with a warm smile, serving him a piece of the simmered tomato. "You are the best husband I could have ever imagined. The one who proved that happiness doesn't need to be loud." When they finished eating, the sunlight had softened to the gentle yellow of the afternoon. Everything was so simple, so ordinary. And that ordinariness was precisely what made it wonderful. They cleaned up together. Toan washed the dishes. Diem wiped the table. Their seamless coordination, needing no direction, had been honed over years of living together. Work completed, they settled onto the old sofa, leaning close to each other. Toan opened his wallet and took out the marriage registration certificate. It was neatly folded, placed beside a small photo of them together. "I'm going to frame this," Toan said, his voice determined. "It's proof that the greatest things can be made from the smallest ones." Diem rested her head on his shoulder, feeling peace flood her soul. Today had no fireworks, no parties. Just a signature, a sidewalk coffee, a motorbike ride, and a cozy meal. But those simple things said everything. Toan and Diem's marriage wasn't an event. It was a genuine continuation of the love they had built. They had turned their everyday love into a lifelong promise, a promise they would continue to write together day by day, and they knew whatever the future held, they would always have each other starting every new day with a cup of coffee and ending it with a smile in their small, sunlit kitchen. Toan chuckled, his laughter warm and relaxed. He rolled up the sleeves of his white shirt, helped Diem wash vegetables, clear the table, and stole glances at his wife whenever he could. "Chong Oi, my husband," Diem called again, pointing to the prepped meat. "Please help your wife marinate this." Toan came to her side, shoulder to shoulder. The words, wife and husband, flowed from their lips, awkward at first, then gradually becoming sweeter, like a new song they had memorized from the very first note. The simple act of preparing a meal together now felt different, warmer, closer, more connected. It was as if the most ordinary tasks were suddenly enveloped in a quiet magic. Toan realized he was savoring every moment. This was their wedding, held in the most private of spaces, flavored with home-cooked food. As they sat down at the table, the late afternoon sunlight softened, streaming through the window to form gentle golden streaks on their small dining table. They talked about everything and nothing, not grand sweeping topics, but the small, intimate details of their life ahead. Which room they would paint, first definitely pale cream, just like the wall in the registry office. Replacing the old refrigerator, Diem said it was a necessary investment for the future. The trips they dreamed of taking one day, a leisurely motorbike trip across Vietnam, just the two of them. Toan starting to learn a new dish to share the household chores with Diem. In between bites of the warm, home-cooked food, Toan suddenly reached across the table and gently took Diem's hand. "We're really married," he said, with a soft laugh, still slightly surprised by the reality. His voice was slightly shaky, yet his gaze was steady. "I still feel a bit overwhelmed, as if everything has become clearer, brighter." Diem squeezed his hand and smiled back, her eyes full of light, the morning's nervousness gone, replaced only by peace. "Yes," she replied simply. "And tomorrow will just be another ordinary day, only happier." Toan looked up at her. His eyes were filled with deep admiration. Diem didn't need grand promises or lavish parties. She just needed him. "And Toan Diem," said her voice dropping slightly. "Thank you for choosing this way. I didn't want a complicated wedding. I wanted a simple, honest marriage. You turned an ordinary morning into the most beautiful moment of my life." Toan gently squeezed her hand. "There's nothing better than marrying you in my favorite shirt after coffee at our usual spot." We didn't need to create an extraordinary moment. We just needed to formalize our everyday moment. He lifted her hand, kissing the back of it softly. Under the brilliant golden light, the silver ring sparkled gently, not dazzling, but steadfast. They sat there for a long time after eating, just talking, laughing, feeling the comfortable weight of the promise they had just made. They were in no rush. They had a lifetime to be together. When the dishes were cleared and the kitchen restored to order, Diem and Toan sat together on the old sofa where they had shared countless evenings, watching movies, reading, and planning. Toan rested his head on Diem's. The silence between them was no longer one of anticipation, but of completion. And in that moment, surrounded by simple food, familiar walls, and the quiet comfort of real life, they both understood that their greatest happiness didn't come from majestic celebrations or perfect scenes. It came from the promise that they would choose each other again and again, from the smallest things, like doing the dishes, to the biggest decisions in life. Starting today, for the rest of their ordinary yet beautiful lives, they didn't just marry each other. They married the life they had built together, a life full of small, honest details and never boring. Thank you for following Toan and Diem's emotional and genuine journey. They proved that true love is a process, not an event. And the greatest happiness is when you find the extraordinary in the ordinary. Their marriage began not with a leap, but with a slow, steady walk on a familiar sidewalk. Tomorrow, they will wake up, still drink, sidewalk, coffee, still ride, the old motorbike, still go to work. But they will do all those things under a new title, husband and wife. And that is the biggest, sweetest change of all.